Do you check under your bed for monsters when you go to sleep? Double check the closet to ensure the boogeyman isn't hiding inside? Are you afraid of ghosts? Then perhaps you might want to stop right now because we're about to delve into the world of the paranormal, and these tales are not for the faint of heart. I went down the rabbit hole of real ghost stories over at Reddit, and I'm going to share their scariest ghost stories. Planning on getting a good night's sleep tonight? Think again. These 19 real ghost stories will have you questioning that bump you hear in the night. Something strange happened to this Reddit user and their grandma. One night they stayed up late watching The Walking Dead. Their grandma had never seen the show before, so they spent the past few nights binge late night watching. It was about 4 a.m. when they finally turned off the television and lights and called it a night. Their grandma went into her room, and the Reddit user went into the bathroom to brush their teeth. And that was when they heard three light knocks right behind them. 3 knocks. Oh my gosh. Since the bathroom was connected to the grandma's room, they assumed it was her checking to see if they were in the bathroom. They answered, but didn't get a response. When they left the bathroom and met their grandma in the hallway, she asked what the Reddit user wanted. Confused, the writer said what they thought she was the one knocking on the bathroom door. But Grandma had also heard 3 knocks on her door and thought it was the Reddit user. Not scary. As it turns out, they both heard the quiet, distant knocks. They searched the house to make sure no one had broken in, double-checked the locks, and finally went to bed. I don't know if I could. The grandma had one deceased son and one son that had been missing for almost a year now. And the Reddit user believes that the knocks had something to do with a missing man, perhaps? Maybe they were trying to reach out to their beloved family. What do you guys think about that one? A few years ago, this Reddit user had just been through a rough divorce from their high school sweetheart. Their best friend had taken to distracting them by taking a long road trip. One morning, they were on their way to Carlsbad, New Mexico, when they paused alongside a river dam. They were drinking cider and snacking when the pair decided to explore the dried riverbed. It was obvious that they weren't the first ones to go trekking through the riverbed. The pair could see human, canine, and feline footprints in the mud. They then recall starting to feel an odd sensation, like they were being watched. Their friend caught the Reddit user's attention and called him over. There was a bone in the ground, what they now believe was a spinal cord. Oh my gosh. At first they thought it was a beef or pork bone or some kind. They continued looking around the riverbed when they found a strange rust-colored rock sticking out from the sand. When they got closer, they realized it was a half-buried little girl's shoe. Oh. The Reddit user stepped back and ran forward, preparing to kick the shoe. Suddenly, they heard a little girl's voice shout, "No, don't, please." They looked around but didn't see anyone besides themselves and their friend, the Reddit user and their friend. The friend asked why they stopped, and they replied, "Didn't you hear the little girl?" Both confused, they decided to shrug it off and then continue on their way. Meanwhile, the feeling that someone was watching grew stronger. A few minutes later, they spotted another bone. Now, I'd be out of there after the first bone. But you never know. It could be an animal bone. Now they began to get scared. The bone was clearly human. The friend called the non-emergency police number for Carlsbad, and they reported what they saw. 1 week later, they received a call from their friend. The Reddit user received a call from their friend that the Carlsbad police had called to report the bones that they found were indeed human. Isn't that sad? During the investigation, the two were questioned, of course, and eventually informed that the rust-colored rock actually wasn't a rock, but the shell of a pickup truck that had disappeared along with a family of 3 that it had been carrying: a man, a woman, and their daughter. It made the Reddit user think back to the girl's shoes sticking out of the mud and the voice they heard. Could that little girl have spoken directly to them? Oh, that's a scary one and a sad one. It really is. Last year, this Reddit user went to a friend's house for a party. Around 1 in the morning, the group decided to use a Ouija board. The Reddit user was the only one who believed in accounts of the paranormal, so she was hesitant when her friends brought out the board. But instead of giving her friends more reasons to tease her when it came to the paranormal, she acted as if she didn't believe in such activity. They began asking the board questions. They started with a few normal questions, and nothing really, happened. Then someone asked if the spirits wanted to hurt them, and it responded with, "Only one." That would creep me out. The group started to get creeped out, at this point, and rightfully so. When one friend asked the natural follow-up question, who, I don't think I would be asking, the board spelled out Natasha, the Reddit user's full name. It should be noted that she doesn't care for their full name, and everyone has called her Tasha. Oh, okay. Tasha then left the room while her friends continued playing, probably a joke on her, but found out later that night that the group forgot to say goodbye to the board. Ugh. Anyone familiar with the Ouija board knows that closing the interaction with the spirit world is crucial before stopping use of the board. Needless to say, she was nervous. After this, Tasha has no memory of the night. She only remembers getting a migraine and nosebleeds. Her friends took videos of her acting strangely, speaking with a changed voice, and a few instances of her talking in other languages. However, that night wasn't the only time this happened. In the following days, Tasha's parents reported the same things happening. Once again, she remembered nothing but migraines and nosebleeds. About 2 weeks later, she was back to normal, or so she thought. Tasha was suddenly hospitalized for excruciating pain in her kidney, so bad that it almost shut down. The doctors tried everything but couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then one day she was scheduled for surgery and the pain suddenly stopped. 1 day later, Tasha was released. Since that incident, she has never felt like she was truly alone. Sometimes she feels someone grabbing her neck or making it difficult to breathe. Tasha has always believed in the paranormal, but this experience made it far more real for her. Oh gosh, that is scary. I would definitely have, I don't know, maybe get some kind of good sage or have something done. That is a scary one. What do you guys think about that one? This Reddit user is a dietary aide at a nursing home for people with Alzheimer's, and they had some seriously scary encounters while working there. Their job mainly consists of washing dishes, and they're normally standing right next to the dishwasher, which makes it difficult to hear what people are saying. On numerous occasions, they have been the dishwasher and heard someone talking to them, even though they knew no one was nearby. One night, the writer went to collect food carts in one of their units alone. The whole time they were in the unit, they felt like they were being followed. Fearing what they might see, they never turned around. Eventually, they pulled off, pretending to use the bathroom. They waited there for about 5 minutes before peering into the hallway where they had just been. There, they saw a patient they recognized. At first, this made them feel better, but soon they realized that it was a patient who had died 3 days prior in a unit near the kitchen. Whoa. Oh my gosh. So the user also related a second experience while they were washing dishes on a different day. They asked the person that they were washing with if they could go into Unit A and get the food carts. The third person who normally washed with them had already left for the day, leaving the writer alone. Suddenly, they heard a voice in their ear. They turned around, but no one was there. They even went into the hallway, but still saw nothing. As they returned to wash the dishes, it happened again. The second time, they realized it was the voice of their great-grandma who had passed away 7 years ago. Spooky. It's a spooky one. Has that ever happened to anyone? In 2013, this Reddit user and her friends decided to make a Ouija board. Her best friend lives about a 45-minute drive from the closest store and nearest town, so there wasn't much to do. They had spent the day watching movies, but eventually they got bored. So the Reddit user, her friend, and their friend's boyfriend and his friend decided to make the board. About a week before they made the board, the two friends had been staying alone at the house when the Reddit user woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway near the bedroom. She tried to wake her friend, but it was no use. She was a heavy sleeper. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The writer waited, holding her breath for the door to open, but it never did. The next few hours she spent awake, waiting for something to happen. When both the girls were finally awake about 11 o'clock that morning, before either one left the room, she told her friend what had happened the night before. And what her friend said in response chilled her to the bone. She said that for years she'd been hearing the same footsteps that had always stopped right outside her bedroom. No one else heard the footsteps until the Reddit user. That night, they made their Ouija board. Oh gosh, I'd never know. The group were messing around with it, not getting any real responses, when they suddenly heard a loud bang in the back of the house. They decided to stop for the night. The friend left to drive the other two home, leaving the Reddit user alone at the house. Being alone after hearing that loud noise and the footsteps made her nervous, so she turned on the television for a distraction while she waited for her friend. In the middle of the opening credits, the television froze and started making loud buzzing noises. She tried to turn off the TV, but the remote wouldn't work. And then she tried unplugging it, but it kept going. That would scare the heck out of me. Thoroughly, she freaked out. She went outside to wait for her friend to get back, which I would have too. At this point, she had started shaking and crying and texted her friend and explaining what happened. Then the dogs started barking at the living room door, viciously growling and snarling like they saw something that no human could. 30 minutes later, her friend finally arrived home. Both girls could hear the television from the porch, but when they went inside, it had completely shut off and was still unplugged. Neither are sure exactly what happened, but they're certain it was some kind of malevolent spirit. Oh my gosh, guys. What do you think about that one? Has it ever happened to you? Scary. So this Reddit user had always been into the paranormal and has experienced a fair number of encounters throughout their life. Recently married, they and their spouse, Charlie, moved into a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. They had only been living there a short time when they started noticing strange occurrences. The first happened while Charlie was upstairs in bed, and they were downstairs watching television. Suddenly, he ran into the living room and asked if they had just been in the bedroom. And the Reddit user answered no, and Charlie panicked. He said that as he was lying in bed, someone had pushed the blanket up so his feet were exposed, and a cold hand had caressed his foot. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh. To avoid the spirit, they moved their room to a different bedroom in the house, but the activity continued. They heard heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs, Bowls and pans would spin clockwise on the counter. Dark, full-bodied figures would walk past their bedroom door and vanished. A knife once lifted and was thrown across the kitchen by an unseen force. Okay, I would be out of there. And the dogs would bark into the corners of the house. Okay, that too is scary. Once they even looked up into the window of the master bedroom and saw an elderly woman staring down at them. Eventually, the young couple had enough and talked with their neighbors to learn about the history of the house. They learned that the house had been built in the 70s, and the elderly lady who owned the house before them died at the age of 101. The two had no doubt that this woman was the spirit torment in the home, so the writer had decided to go upstairs and make peace. They informed the spirit that they intended to remain in the house, and they promised to keep it nice. They offered to help her cross over, but also said she was welcome to stay if her presence became more peaceful. And since then, the couple has been living peacefully in the home, and the old woman occasionally makes herself known. I like that. I love that they stayed and they weren't scared. That's awesome. What do you guys think? This Reddit user has always been afraid of the paranormal, anything paranormal. For 5 years, when he was young, he suffered from severe anxiety and depression. So while this was going on, some strange things began happening. One night, he was having trouble sleeping when he heard a man's voice say his name. He blew it off as something in his head and eventually fell asleep. A few nights later, he heard it again, but this time it was louder, clear as day, a woman's voice. He tried to respond, but the room was silent. At this point, he was starting to get nervous. Once again, the nights following were quiet, so he slowly forgot about the incident. And that was until one night when he was laying in bed and started hearing someone breathing. He hid under the covers until it stopped, but the incident made it hard to sleep during the following week. And now that this Reddit user has moved and learned to better manage his depression and anxiety, the paranormal occurrences have stopped. I mean, maybe it was something in that house. I know my oldest daughter, when she was, I think, 14, in this house, came running to me screaming, I just heard somebody say my name in my ear. And she was trying to go to bed. And it really, really scared her. She never slept in that room again. We had to move her room. So, yeah, scary. What you guys think? All right, so in this story, the Reddit user loves their grandparents but hates their house. The house has been in their family for over a century, and something has always felt off about it. The rooms would always feel cold, despite the air being off, and visitors often reported feeling like they were being watched. For about a month, this Reddit user and their parents were living in the house. It was during this time that an event happened that terrified them. One night, they woke for no particular reason and went to the bathroom, the Reddit user. Suddenly, the door shut and locked behind them. Okay, I've heard of maybe shutting, but locking? The lock on the door was broken, so it shouldn't have even been able to lock, let alone close on its own. Then the light in the bathroom went out. They had always been interested in ghost hunting and had a ghost hunting app on their phone. They used it in the past but assumed it didn't work. The app was supposed to tell its user whatever the ghost was saying. Oh, you've heard about those ones. We've all heard about that one. So they opened the app and they felt something or someone breathing down their neck. A few seconds later, the door unlocked and the radar read one word: run. So they ran back to hide and hid under the covers until they fell asleep. Okay, I would not be able to sleep. The next night, they woke up again and went to the kitchen for a snack. It was there that they saw a dark figure pick something up from the pantry and turn to them and then disappear. I guess the spirit got hungry. They tried to return to the room, but the living room door slammed shut as they walked toward it. Again, they felt someone breathing down their neck. They kept pulling at their door until it finally opened. Back in their room, hiding under the covers, they couldn't sleep because they kept hearing footsteps on the porch. The next night, they decided to try sleeping in the den. Their phone was left open to the ghost hunting app when it picked up a signal, and it read Quentin, which was their grandfather's name. That was the last activity the user experienced before they moved out. Well, that's creepy. Creepy. So what do you guys think about that one? I think it's creepy. I don't think I could have. I think I might have. I don't know. Maybe I probably would have been doing a lot of investigations, honestly, and not a lot of sleeping. About 2 weeks ago, this Reddit user's little sister began hearing voices. She said it's a deep and masculine voice that calls to her at night in her room, telling her to come outside. It comes from outside in the middle of their yard. One day, their parent went out, and the Reddit user, their two little sisters, and their friends stayed home alone. That night, they saw something moving in a small patch of trees in their backyard. Telling the younger girls to stay inside, they went out to investigate, but found nothing. On their way back inside, something threw them. What? On their way back inside, something threw them over 5 feet into the air? Oh my gosh. They scrambled to their feet and ran inside, losing a shoe in the process. After cowering inside for a few minutes, okay, I would have been crying. They realized they needed that shoe for work the next day, so they ventured back outside. I would have been like, oh, screw it, you can have this shoe. This time they came prepared, bringing their dog with them. I would bring my dog too. But he refused to follow them into the yard. As quickly as they could, they grabbed their shoe and ran back inside. Finally, back indoors, they asked the eldest of their sisters to look at their back because it felt like it was burning. And they pulled up the shirt and screamed. There were several long scratches running down the user's back. The four of them went out to the front porch while the youngest went back inside to retrieve something, but came back a few seconds later saying someone was looking in the back window. The only problem was that in order for her to have seen someone in the window, that person would have to have been 7 feet tall. Now, all thoroughly freaked out, they decided to remain on the porch until one of the parents came home. Okay, that sounds about right. After a few minutes passed, they heard heavy footsteps running toward the front yard from the side of the house where the driveway extends. Gravel flew as though it was being kicked up, but nothing was there. They went back inside until their mother got home. She blessed the area where the Reddit user was attacked and their sister's body and spirit. So she blessed the area and the sister's body. Whatever the thing was, it didn't appear to be able to get inside the house. The user and their sisters still believe it's hanging around the house to this day. Okay, I would definitely have to cry and be like, I want out of this place. If it really threw you 5 feet in the air, come on. I don't think I could stay with that. That's more than just that could be a poltergeist, but not a nice one. What do you guys think about that one? Right, so this Reddit user says, I grew up in an older home in Florida. I have two brothers, and since I was the only girl, I got to have my own room on the second floor, a room that I would end up fearing at night. We lived in this house until we moved when I was 17. I don't remember anything strange happening until I was around 15 or 16. Just the normal mom asking us kids where we put a glass or book, small things that none of us touched. In hindsight, that was probably either the man or the boy. I came home late one night from a football game at my high school, and it was around 10 or 11. My younger brother had a friend over, and they liked to play pranks on me. When I poked my head in to say hello, I made sure I asked if they wouldn't mess with me that night since I had to get up early for a soccer game, and they both agreed and wished me good night. The way my room was set up at that time, there was the actual main part of the room that had my TV and dresser, a couch, coffee table that I would use for my friends staying over when I was reading. Oh, lucky. My bed was in a little alcove that used to be a small porch, so that my bed was flush with windows that looked into the backyard. Oh gosh. I put my bag on the couch and walked over to the bed to go to sleep. It was in the middle of the night when someone knocking on the wooden bed frame woke me up. I thought it was my brother and his friend who were, just being annoying and run out of the room giggling. Whoa. But I flipped over to yell at them, but I didn't see my brother. There was a boy about the age of 12 with sandy brown hair that hung to his chin, wearing a purple hoodie, just smiling at me, like a kid who just got caught doing something that he shouldn't have been. And I could see right through him, to the rest of the room. I watched as he slowly faded, completely terrified until he was gone. I slept on the couch that night with the TV going in the background, and I moved my bed to the center of the room after that. The next morning, I almost talked myself out of it, thinking that it was a dream or maybe it had really been the boys. I asked them the next morning if they had knocked on my bed, but both were sound asleep. My mom had overheard me and said that she had seen the boy too. Since that night, we started to notice more strange things, but I'm positive it wasn't the boy. There was a mean man that I could feel at night in my room. We would hear footsteps walking around upstairs when all of us were in the kitchen, and books would fly from the shelves and glasses would be pulled down and break. Our dogs would stand at the bottom of the stairs that led to the second floor and just growl. One of the most eerie things was the smell of cigarette smoke in the downstairs hallway. No one in our family even smoked inside, ever. One of the last things that happened before we moved was my brother waking up to see a tall, dark figure standing over me while I was sleeping. The entire family at that point had seen or experienced something. The boy was just a kid who wanted to be known, but the man was something else. None of us were sad to drive away from that house for the last time, as I don't blame them, besides the poor boy. What do you guys think about that one? That one's probably my favorite so far. Ooh, the house by the cemetery. This one's going to be good. So this Reddit user, their best friend Bella, and her little sister and brother went to Bella's grandparents' house to spend the night when they were younger. Although the house was next to a cemetery, no one was worried. The Reddit user was rather fascinating, but not yet wary. Bella's grandparents, or grandpa, helped them set up the tent in the backyard. That night, they were up late watching a movie, and when it was over, the user and Bella left the tent and went to sit on the swings in the backyard. Bella began telling stories about the haunted house she used to live in. After a while, something in the cemetery caught the writer's attention. When their eyes adjusted to the dark, they made out a faceless, horned figure looking at them through the darkness. Oh my gosh. Bella didn't see the figure at first, but when the user directed her attention to it, she freaked out. The pair bolted for the tent and zipped themselves inside. They turned on music to try to help them fall asleep, but it didn't muffle the sounds of a fence rattling like something wanted to climb over, a repeating, terrifying bull-like huff. Okay, oh my. The next morning, they tried to tell their story to Bella's family. Bella's grandparents were skeptical, but her sister and mother, who lived with Bella in the haunted house, believed every word. What do you guys think about that one? Wow, that's a good one too. haunted by my sister's doll. This is going to be good. Ever since this Reddit user was at school with friends talking about Chucky, the doll, they have been afraid of dolls. Luckily, the only one they had at home was a basic Barbie doll. But then for Christmas, their sister got 2 porcelain dolls and a big rag doll. The dolls really freaked the Reddit user out. Every time they went into their sister's room, they would turn the dolls toward the wall so they weren't looking at them or into the room. Soon, creepy things started happening. Cuts and scratches would appear on the writer's hands and knees with no explanation of how they got there. One morning when they woke up, they were red scratches on their back. There were red scratches on their back, although they didn't remember any pain or feeling of being scratched. The scariest thing happened while they were home alone. They went into their sister's room to play with her Dreamcast. As they made their way in, turning all the dolls toward the wall, they heard a little girl's laugh. The rag doll that had been lying on their sister's bed facing the wall slowly began looking toward them, maybe? Or they ran, locking themselves in their room until their mother and sister got home. Neither believed the story, and their sister was mad because the rag doll had fallen to the floor. The next day, the Reddit user took the doll to the dumpster and never saw it again. You guys believe that story? I don't know if I believe that story. But I know if there was a doll in this house that really, 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 really scared my kids, they'd be like, it's got to go. What do you guys think about that one? All right, here is, I believe, the last one. So when this Reddit user was 16 or 17, he had just moved into a new house with his mother and sister, and he got the bedroom in the basement. Oh, heck no. After a month after moving in, he started noticing bizarre things. Hangers would sway as though they were moved. Oh no. Hangers would sway as though there was a wind, and he often heard light, unexplainable knocks in the middle of the night. It was creepy enough to make him move all of his belongings to the spare bedroom upstairs. I love that, because I would too. Now, this one is more believable. One day, while he played video games in the basement, why would you go back down there? A white mist shot out from behind the television, up the wall and across the ceiling. He bolted out from the basement and told his mom, who told him it was just his imagination. Why do things happen in the basements and the attics and places like that? Well, I guess it's because they like to be in places that are abandoned. So, yeah, right? Makes sense, right? Over the next few months, he started hearing knocks and seeing objects move again. Slowly, it started getting stronger. The whispers started, painful screams. Soon it was happening every night without fail. One night he was left alone while his mother was away for business and his sister was away at a friend's house. It was 1 a.m. and very little was happening paranormally speaking. He was about to fall asleep when he heard a loud shriek of his name. Oh, he slept the rest of the night with the lights on, as I would have too. The next few months passed with only minor incidents, but then things got really crazy. Late one night, he was watching television in his room when his bed started shaking. At first, it was only just a small tremor, so he ignored it. And then he began feeling something pulling at the covers from the foot of his bed. Ah! A cold hand grabbed his ankle and tried dragging him. He screamed, and his mom and his sister came running. At that point, it was clear something was going on. Well, yeah. His mother called the people who sold them the house and told them what happened. The former owners, although offering no reason for the intrusions, had their priest come to bless the house. The occurrences never fully stopped, but they did become much less frequent and intrusive after the blessing. What do you guys think about that one? That would have scared me. A poor young kid. I was wrong. There is more. And I did pause at the last part of the last one because a bird hit the window and it scared me. Here we go. So, the Reddit user. When I was 16 years old, babysitting was an additional source of income. And I was lucky enough to have many families in my area that needed a babysitter. A lady that babysat for quite often asked me one day if would mind caring for her sister's baby that she mentioned her sister has a hard time keeping a babysitter. Well, of course, I thought it was just due to the child. Well, I didn't mind at all. I quickly accepted that job, meaning more income for myself, and she was a super nice lady. However, her husband was a jerk. He didn't want to be bothered with the baby at all and was always in a mood. For the most part, he was away a lot. My first day, she made a point to tell me that the house was quirky, making a lot of strange noises and whatnot. She told me to call her if I had any problems. And I thought that was strange, but I dismissed it as just being because maybe she was nervous to leave the baby with a new sitter. My first week was really uneventful, weird noises, but I just dismissed them. One distinctive thing I remember about the house was that it was always dark, even on the brightest day. It was really dark. During the day, you still had to have the lights on, even with the curtains open. The baby, who was only 6 months old, had a cute little rainbow nightlight. It was an older one that you manually had to use some force to click on and off. And once it lightened up in the morning, I would go and turn off the nightlight. Well, one morning came. I turned off the nightlight. I went out into the living room to catch up on some homework, and as soon as I settled, the baby started crying and screaming. I rushed into the room. He was hysterical, and the nightlight was on. I know for a fact I turned it off. It wasn't a mistake or something I thought I did. I played it in my mind over and over again. I know I turned it off that light. I took the baby and comforted him. I was so disoriented and scared I didn't even try to turn it off again. I thought if something wants it on, let it be on. I didn't tell the mother about the nightlight. Every day she would come and ask me if everything was okay. And I knew she wasn't just talking about the baby. Over the next few weeks, the experience came more and more often. Lights turning on and off, and doors closing by themselves. All of the events finally came to a peak. I was in the kitchen mixing some oatmeal for the baby when from behind me something tugged at the bottom hem of my shirt and hard. It was so hard that my shirt tightened around my neck. I turned around and no one was there. I screamed and ran into the living room where the baby stared at me from the high chair like I was crazy. I didn't tell his mother about this either. I don't know why I didn't tell her. Maybe I was scared that she would think I was crazy. Or maybe I just didn't want to bother her. Or maybe, sorry. Or maybe I was just scared since I never told anyone. Finally, she and her husband moved out of the house that fall, making their stay only 10 months. I was the only babysitter who managed to be permanent during that time. I never discussed the events that happened there. Later, I did some research in the area. It's incredibly rural. I can't say that word. And as southern as you can get. It also has a rich history in Indian tribes. While looking up the house, I discovered that during its construction, evidence of a full Indian burial site had been discovered. Dang. That one is scary, very scary. What do you guys think about that one? A couple of years ago, this Reddit user was working the night shift and was on their way to work when they stopped at a street light. Since there was no other cars or people around, they quickly got impatient with the waiting around. That was when they heard a knock on the passenger window. Outside stood an older man, seemingly around 60. They rolled down their window and asked if he was okay. When he didn't answer, the Reddit user asked again, but still got no response. Finally, he asked for a ride, saying that he only needed to go a few blocks. Okay, I would say no. The Reddit user said yes and turned up the heat after he got in, noticing that the man was shivering. After they had been driving for a while, the man said his name was Henry. The driver asked once more if he was okay, and Henry seemed drunk or ill. Henry sat still, saying nothing. After about 10 minutes of driving, Henry suddenly shouted, asking the driver to stop. Eerily, they were in the middle of nowhere with the fields on either side. Henry climbed from the car and started walking down the street. He then suddenly stopped in the middle of the road and stood there, unmoving. Slowly, they started to drive away and look in the rearview mirror. They saw Henry following the car. Their attention briefly shifted down because of a notification on their phone, and when they looked up again, Henry was gone. They sped to work and told a coworker about the incident as soon as possible. Apparently, Henry is a regular and does this often, freaking out the newcomers in the area. Okay, that would scare me. That would really scare me. What would you guys do? Would it scare you? Would you give him a ride? Strange things had been happening to this Reddit user's house for as long as they could remember. One night, they woke up to the sound of someone standing just outside their room, with the floor creaking under their weight. They closed their eyes and pretended to be asleep, hoping it would leave them alone. Whatever it was, entered the room and stopped right beside the bed. They could feel the presence there. They cracked open their eyes, hoping to still appear asleep while stealing a glimpse of the presence. A white figure stood in front of them. At first, they wanted to call to their brother, but they were too afraid to antagonize the ghost. Eventually, they closed their eyes. When they opened them again a few minutes later, the figure was gone. Thinking their father's bedroom would be a safer place to sleep, they wrapped themselves in a blanket and made their way across the house. But when they entered the dining room, they felt as though several pairs of eyes were staring at them. They kept going until they reached the doors of the bedroom, but it was locked. Instead of going back to their room, they went into the living room and fell asleep. Around 4 a.m, they woke again, and sitting on top of the television in the corner, oh my gosh, sitting on top of the television in the corner was the white figure. This time it was the clear figure of an elderly woman. She was somewhat blurry. Her eyes were darker than her pale body. She said their name and tried coaxing them outside. The Reddit user screamed, and the figure vanished. Okay, that would scare the heck out of me. I would think I would pee my pants. They hid under the blanket until morning. When daylight had come, they told their story to the family. Their brother believed every word, saying he had seen the same exact figure watching him sleep. What do you guys think about that one? Okay, no, hell no. Home Alone, I think. Home Alone, I think. Okay, guys. One day, this writer wasn't feeling well, so they stayed home from work. They were in bed asleep on their back with a pillow over their face when they heard the door open. They were still half asleep, so they didn't fully register that the door was being opened. Then they felt pressure on their stomach, like someone was poking them with 2 or 3 fingers. They jumped and heard the sound of retreating footsteps, but the pillow was still over their heads, so they couldn't see who it was or what it was. The footsteps sounded more like a light pitter-patter than actual human footsteps. Maybe it was their cat. Assuming it was their mother home from lunch break, they at first thought nothing of it. Checking their phone, they saw it was only 10 a.m. It was much too early for their mom to be home. As they were sitting in bed exactly what had happened began to settle in, and they started getting nervous. Suddenly, the door opened. They ran from their room through a different door that leads outside and called their mom. She came home, and they looked through the house together. While they were looking, the door handle to a closet started to jiggle violently, freaking them both out. That night, the two told the Reddit user's stepfather, who at first didn't even believe him. He only started to after weird things started happening all over the house, pans flying across the kitchen, stuff randomly falling from the walls, and the new cat freaking out for no apparent reason. And as I say that, my cat walks into the den where I'm at. But that one was a pretty good one. What do you guys think about that one? The disembodied voice. Ooh. All right, so the house that this Reddit user grew up in was ancient. When they were about 8, they started seeing strange shadows and hearing voices. Their parents would dismiss the accounts as part of their imagination. Most unsettling, but nothing was ever too scary. Most was unsettling, but nothing too scary. One night, 3 years ago, they were laying on their couch with the door open when they got the feeling that they were being watched. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't shake the feeling. Then the hairs on the back of their necks stood up, and they knew something was right behind them. They felt someone's breath on their neck, and a voice said, "We can see you." Oh my God. They screamed and jumped and ran out of the house. Can you guys imagine that? "We can see you." That would make me poop my pants. No freaking way. All right, guys, here is the last story. One night, this Reddit user was at a friend's house. She was downstairs watching a movie. The friend was upstairs playing video games. Feeling neglected, she fell asleep despite feeling deeply uncomfortable, like being watched. She went back to sleep after asking her friend if he was going to come to bed soon. When she woke again, it was to someone touching her face saying, "Don't worry, love, I'll be down soon." She disregarded it as a dream and went back to sleep. Later, she was awoken by the same voice saying, I know, I keep using this excuse. I'm coming soon. I really do miss you." This time, she knew something wasn't right. She got out of bed, searched the entire downstairs, found nothing. She heard snoring upstairs and knew her friend was sound asleep. Since it was now 7 in the morning, she got ready and left for work. The next time they were together, she asked her friend if he had been messing with her that night, and he said no. But at that moment, a song came on the car radio and sounded exactly like the voice. She asked who the singer was, and he said that was his best friend's band. His best friend had been the lead singer but had committed suicide a year before. They had lived together for a while, and most of his stuff was still in the house. It appears that at least his dead friend had not wanted her alone. Okay, I don't know if I really believe that one, but it is a good story. Good little story. What do you guys think? That was, like I said, the last one. And I wanted to tell you guys about a couple things that happened to me in this house. My puppies had been barking. I was sitting on my bed with my daughter, or talking or something, I don't know. And then the puppies just started looking at the closet and barking. We're like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, the doors fly open and the bar that the clothes hang on the top, because I have a top and a bottom bar. Well, the top one just flew out with the hangers, the bar, and everything, and scared the heck out of me and my daughter. Scared us to bits. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever, I'm just going to pray, and it's going to be fine. I'm going to be positive. This is my house and I love it. But it kind of scared me. I still slept in there. My daughter was very scared of the room. But so that happened. And then a couple of nights later, and then about 3 a.m., the bottom bar with all the clothes just flew out of the closet. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I got both of the bars fixed. I haven't had anything happen since then. And I don't know. I just pray and I try to stay positive. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's somebody, trying to get my attention. I don't feel any anything malicious. Like I said before, I was laying on my stomach taking a nap. I was exhausted in the daytime. I woke up to somebody tickling my foot. My foot was like right there by the closet. And I woke up screaming at all the kids, and they're like nobody was in there. Nobody was in there. And like it just freaked me out. It really creeped me out. So I don't sleep with my feet out of the blankets now. And like I said before, my oldest daughter, had experience in the middle room here. She was laying in bed, trying to go to bed, and she heard her name whispered into her ear, Dee Dee. Because, sometimes she goes by Dee Dee. And that really scared the heck out of her. So she ended up not sleeping there, and we had to change her room over to another room. She never went in that room again. That really scared her. But in time, she learned not to be scared of like maybe it was her grandma, my mom, because she called her Dee Dee. So in time, she kind of learned not to be scared of the unknown. I mean, we're scared, but we're not scared, if it makes sense. We're not scared now, especially of this house because we're used to it. But yeah, so this was a very raw video. I usually don't do raw, but I thought, this might be fun. It took me over an hour just to do it this way. Imagine how long it takes me to do it when I'm not making any mistakes. I have to restart each line. But I hope this was fun for you guys. Some Reddit stories. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you hopefully next time on Tales Told in the Dark. Love you guys.